What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Chicago Football Show. I am Scott Bair, alongside my teammates, as always, Michael Norman and Carmen Vitali. But you will see an extra box here, and that's because we're really excited about this interview, to be honest with you. NFL VP of Broadcast Planning, Mike North, with us, and this comes after last week's schedule release, which has become yet another NFL holiday in the middle of May. Huge primetime announcement where reporters start booking hotel rooms, fans start booking road trips. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to talk a little Bears schedule here, which just came out on Wednesday. A lot of tough opponents, but I think the most interesting thing is that they have 3 primetime games in addition to 2 more exclusive national windows. They play on a Saturday on December 20th against the Bears. They also play on Black Friday as well against the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So this is a 5-12 team coming off of 2024. I promise I'm getting to a question here, Mike, and it's this. When you see 5 exclusive window games for a team that was last place, you think maybe the league and its broadcast partners are more excited at the additions of Ben Johnson and what they did in free agency. Is that a fair assessment that maybe the league is raising an eyebrow and paying attention to the Bears and giving them opportunities to put out their product to the entire country?
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at this. We've got, as you well know, a lot more primetime windows than we've ever had before, a lot more standalone windows than we ever had. You count the 9:30 a.m. Europe games, like you mentioned, Black Friday, side-by-side Mondays, the Saturdays on Fox in Week 16, the Christmas triple header. There's just so many more mouths to feed. And, we're going to probably go to the well a little bit more often with some of the traditional, strong national brands. And look, we were, I don't want to say all in, but we were pretty in on the Bears last year, right? Coming off, I think it was a 7-win season, adding Caleb, one of the most interesting offseason stories. This year, we've seen a long history of quarterbacks make that jump from year 1 to year 2. You mentioned the head coach. He probably had his pick of jobs. He could have gone anywhere this offseason. He chose Chicago. That means something. And obviously the other 3 teams in the division all made the playoffs. So there's a lot of good games, a rotation through the NFC East, through the AFC North. There's just so many good games on the schedule. It's hard almost not to put them in big windows. And yeah, I think you could safely say the league is hoping the Bears are playoff relevant down the stretch, yes.
Yeah, it's a big market with a lot of people that are going to tune in regardless, but there seems to be kind of more of an emphasis on getting some of these division matchups early, and so the Bears are going to be tested early by their own division. Is that kind of an intentional thing that you want to kind of grab people's attention, or what's the thinking behind wanting these guys to play within their division right away?
Yeah, it's probably actually the opposite, Carmen. I think we've been doing this a long time. We tend to kind of backload the division games. It's one of the legacies that Howard Katz retiring is going to leave behind, among many others. All division games in the final week of the season, as many as we can. Weeks 15, 16, 17 just keeps teams from clinching playoff spots, keeps games relevant regardless of the records. That being said, there's no prohibition or no aversion to division games early. As we started thinking about week 1 specifically, for instance, looking at kickoff, obviously on Thursday, we ended up with a division game there with Dallas, Philly. We knew we were sending the Chargers to Brazil. We ended up with a division game there for Chiefs Chargers. We looked at a doubleheader game for CBS. We ended up with a division game there for Detroit Green Bay. And just as we got to the bookend on Monday, thinking about, all right, what stories are left to tell? What are the big teams, the big brands, the big, frankly, ratings opportunities that are out there still for Monday night after having fed the mouths on Thursday, Friday, Sunday? And NFC North divisional matchup has a long history of being very well received by our media partners and our fans. And this one's got a lot of intrigue in week 1 with Bears and Vikings right out of the gate. Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us, Mike. One of the big games that I think a lot of Bears fans have circled is the Black Friday matchup against the Eagles. How important has that been, adding that extra game now to that Thanksgiving weekend and kind of, it's a little bit along the lines of college football, right? Kind of continuing the Thanksgiving weekend along with then the Sunday games that will happen there. How important has that been for the NFL to add that Black Friday game?
Yeah, it's growing. I mean, that's the best way to think about it. When we added Black Friday for the first time a couple of years ago, it was a Jets Dolphins game, and it was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers, and he lasted 4 plays. So we just kind of toe in the water on Black Friday that first year. Last year, as we were thinking about, okay, let's make Black Friday a thing. I mean, you really have to kind of shift consumer behavior. We know that there's 30, 35, 40 million people, hopefully maybe 50 million people watching the NFL on Thursday at Thanksgiving. Can we keep them interested, keep them invested, and have them come back on Friday? Last year, we put a Chiefs game in there. That helped. This year, Bears-Eagles, another Howard Katzism, sounds like a football game. Bears-Eagles sounds like it's going to matter. Outdoors, some weather just after Thanksgiving, just feels like football, and it feels like the right time of the year for us to utilize, an asset like that. Not my asset, the fans' assets, but like we said, the Bears have a lot of really good games on their schedule. Bears, Eagles, Black Friday felt right, and it's on the heels of maybe, hopefully, the biggest Thanksgiving ever when you think about Packers, Lions, Chiefs, Cowboys, and Bengals, Ravens on Thursday night. Try to continue it and roll right into Friday.
Yeah. How y'all put this schedule together? It looks like a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, and I can really nerd out about this stuff. But I did, and I don't want to get too granular here, but I did want to get some insight about how you divvy up bye weeks. So, for example, the Bears have a bye week in week 5, which I believe is the earliest bye week that you can have. Fans don't necessarily love that, but how do you kind of figure out where that bye week is going to be, kind of maybe give us some strategy behind it, and then how the Bears ended up in week 5, as of course everybody wants week 9 or 10, but how they ended up in week 5.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say random, but there's some randomness to it, quite honestly. The buys, you're right, they fall in weeks 5 through now 14, and they kind of move around. Sometimes they cover stadium blocks, whether it's the Chicago Marathon or something else like that. They move around to cover other stadium blocks. They move around sometimes to cover tough travel. If an East Coast team has to go to the West Coast, say, for a night game, and then they're not going to get home until 5 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, that's a good time for the bye week to fall. Again, I don't want to say random because that's not entirely true, because there is some thought behind it. There's a couple things you got to think about. One is, when was the last time the Bears had the earliest possible bye? I don't know it off the top of my head. I assume because they got it in week 5 this year, they didn't have a week 5 bye last year. So try to move it around. If you had the earliest possible bye one year, you shouldn't get it the next. And now we've got this notion of a bye that maybe is too late. You wait all the way to week 14 for your bye week. That's an awful lot of football before you get your rest period. But we do think about the short week Thursdays as a rest period as well, because you get the 10 days on the back end. Most coaches give the team the weekend off. So, yes, the Bears' bye is early, but as you noted, the Black Friday, their short week game this year is late, week 13. So they get whatever that is, 9 or 10 days before week 14. So they do get a little bit of a rest period there before the run to the playoffs, and just trying to think constantly about separating the Thursday games from the bye weeks. Maybe if you got multiple Thursday games, like I think you guys had last year, separate those from each other and from the bye week. So not quite random, but a little strategy, and certainly no intent to have it land on anybody in week 5. But if it does, they've probably paid their dues with the earliest possible bye for a couple of years now.
I was gonna say it has to be somebody, right? I'm more curious just about the process then in general of, all right, you have some really tangible reasons why certain teams can host on this game, or there's a concert at their stadium, so they can't have it there this weekend, or there's a concert, at the stadium across the parking lot even. There's a lot of tangible kind of moving parts to this, but then all the things that you're saying about making sure that there are ratings draws and maybe more intangible things, what would you say is the balance between, all right, we have to do it this way because of the logistics, but then we also want to do it this way versus, like the thought process behind the markets and all of that kind of stuff, or having teams that have paid dues with early bye weeks? What's the breakdown, like percentage wise, of things that are just strictly logistics versus what you guys are like, this would be a good story?
Yeah, you've got it right when you say the word balance. That's exactly what this whole process is. It's balancing the revenue with the competitive side. I mean, think about it. If you're the guy in charge of selling tickets for the Chicago Bears, you probably want as many home games as possible in the early part of the season before the weather turns. You probably want your weakest home draws, if there is such a thing, kind of early in the year. And then late in the year, that's when we'll take Green Bay. That's when we'll take Detroit, because we know the fans will show up for that one, even if the weather's bad. Whereas if you're the head coach, you're probably thinking quite the opposite, right? Give me all the home games I can get late in the season, and I'll go ahead and take the division opponents kind of earlier before they get into their groove, and I'll take my cupcakes, my homecoming opponents down the stretch when I need them for playoff spots. So it's a balancing act, not just within each of the 32 organizations, but also for us across the entire league. You're trying to maximize engagement, maximize television viewership, and obviously at the end of the day, maximize revenue, while also, you do have some competitive inequities to consider for the clubs, and whether it's the earliest possible bye, a 3-game road trip, whatever it is a coach or general manager hate, where's that balance? And we try to push the viewership as high as we can. And if that means a little bit more team pain come with it, probably we're willing to do that right up to a line. Where's that line? And hopefully we didn't cross it. That's sort of the whole balancing act.
All right, Mike, you talked about kind of the balancing acts. One of the balancing acts that you guys probably have to deal with are the international games. 6 international games coming up this year. How cool is it to have those international games create a whole new time period, the 9 o'clock, 9:30 window? And how cool can that be for, NFL fans to get an extra football, get more football in their lives?
Yeah, I always used to like traveling to the West Coast during football season, and you wake up and that 1 o'clock Eastern window starts at 10 a.m. Like, this is great. Now look, the commissioner's been very clear. He has a vision for our international growth, and he's talking about 8, 10, 12, maybe 16 international games at some point in the season. Daunting for the scheduling team, but awesome for the fans, like you said. And could we ever really start to, kick the tires on some, more fun and innovative stuff like that? You see what we're doing now with the Monday night doubleheaders. We've been doing them kind of overlapping these last couple of years. This year we're going to go back to the doubleheader, true 6 hours of football on Monday night. Could you ever do something like that on a Sunday night? Could we start at like 9:30 in the morning in Europe, play our regular 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock Eastern windows, and then maybe come with an 11 o'clock Eastern? Maybe we'll play in Hawaii or something. Like, could we really have 14 hours of NFL football one day? Those are the kind of things that, our fans will tell us, when it's too much. But so far they've managed to find us wherever we've put the games, whatever date, whatever time, and whatever platform. So they vote with their remotes. They'll tell us when it's too far, but I don't think we've gone there just yet. I think there's still room for some more fun stuff.
Yeah, the appetite for NFL football seems to be insatiable at this point. It's so interesting just to hear about how these schedules kind of come together. Great insight from NFL VP of Broadcast Planning, Mike North. Mike, thank you so much for joining the Chicago Football Show and kind of giving Bears fans some insight into this schedule that comes together. It doesn't just you don't wave a magic wand. There's a lot of balance and science behind it. Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Good to see you guys. Take care.
Thanks so much to NFL VP of Broadcast Planning, Mike North. Great insight about what goes into making the Bears schedule. Carmen, what did you kind of take from that conversation? What did you kind of learn coming out of it about how this process is done?
The league wanted the Bears to be good last year too. I mean,
yeah,
it's so funny to hear because you talk about the 10,000 piece puzzle, like you said, Scott, with Mike, and like you think that there's enough moving parts already when you're just talking logistics. And then you also hear that, like, no, there's a lot of intent behind the games, like when the games are and who's going to draw the most ratings. And is this favorable enough to the team, or is it too favorable? Is it not favorable enough? Like, there are so many intangible things that go into the schedule. And the NFL schedule makers are very acutely aware of what the big storylines are in the NFL and what's going to draw eyeballs. And they have their own kind of hopes and predictions. And so it was just funny to hear that, like, they were like, yeah, we thought the Bears were going to be worth watching on primetime last year too. And so we're hoping that works out this year with the 5 kind of standalone and primetime spots. And it's just funny to think that the schedule makers are like right along with the city of Chicago being like, no, it's going to be different this year.
I'm with you on that, Carmen. Like, I mean, in general, like the NFL schedule makers are essentially betting, right? They're betting on which teams they think are going to be good throughout the season. So I thought that was interesting to hear too. I think, NFL fans kind of know that, we could see the schedules. We could kind of read between the lines, and we know they're saving good matchups for the right times. But yeah, it's interesting to just hear, kind of how it's pieced together. That's got to be a crazy job though, right? Like, you're not going to make everybody happy. You're going to have, there's a million combinations. Like, good luck with that one. I just like reading it. I like predicting it. I like to see, where I could travel eventually, but I'm good putting it together. Pass on that one.
Yeah, it's so many different simulations, and then they ultimately end up with what was released on Wednesday night. Why it's a primetime affair, I don't know. My least favorite tentpole event of the NFL calendar, if we're being perfectly honest. But it did produce a Bears schedule that starts, as Carmen pointed out in the conversation, with a season opening game against the Minnesota Vikings. Ben Johnson's return to Detroit in week 2, a week 5 bye, which is the earliest it can be, and is absolute dog poop, to be honest with you. Not good. Then they roll through 13 consecutive games, which is a long stretch. And after that, after the bye, they go through 6 road games in their next 9. 5 of them against 5 of those road games against playoff teams. The 6th team is Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
I was going to say the 6th team is the Bengals.
Right, essentially another playoff team before they wrap with a kind of even split at home towards the end. They finish with the Lions as well, which could be an important one, a Saturday game against Green Bay. I'm kind of throwing a lot of words out there, but it was daunting when we saw the opponent list, right? And it doesn't feel any less so for a team that has the number 2 overall strength of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you are the NFL schedule makers and this is the year that it falls that these divisions are playing each other, whatever. I have to think that you look at that and go, ooh, this is going to be really difficult, because it is. You've got the NFL's toughest division, the NFC North. You have to play, all 3 teams there multiple times throughout the season if you're the Chicago Bears. Then you also have to go play the AFC North. And the team that finished in 4th place in the AFC North, I don't think anybody is predicting that they're going to finish, I guess that's the Browns, but the Bengals, the 3rd in the NFC North, I don't think that anybody is predicting that they're going to finish without a playoff berth this year. I mean, especially with all the money that they put into Jamar Chase, they retained T. Higgins. We'll see what happens with Trey Hendrickson, but this is not the year to play a 4th place schedule. It's not the year to play in the NFC North. But I do have a silver lining for you, Scott and Norm, about the week 5 bye. And if you're looking for a silver lining, which I think you do when you have the earliest possible bye. So when teams go to study their opponents, right, the usual amount of games that they take as a sample size is 4 games. So they're honing in on 4 games to figure out who this team really is, what they do, what their tendencies are. And that's what they kind of hone in on as they're game planning for opponents. Well, the Bears kind of get to internally do that on the season, because they will play 4 games. They will get to kind of see how things are developing, see what kind of team they are, what trajectory they're on, what foundation they're building, and then have an opportunity to reset the things that aren't working in week 5 before you lay too much of a foundation of some bad habits or this, that, or something that's not working, or this, that, and the other, while still having a good amount of time to figure out if things are working. So I mean, it's still not ideal, and you still do have to play 14 games after, however many weeks after. But I do think that there's kind of positives that come from having an early bye when you have a new regime, when you have a new scheme, when you have a new culture. And it gives you a very, mark it on your calendar, circle it. This is the time when we can really evaluate ourselves and self-scout and correct some things that maybe aren't going as well as we want to before you get in too deep. So that's my silver lining. Look at me being optimistic.
You got to take a silver lining. I love it. Hey, Carmen, if you're coming silver linings, that means that we're in optimistic territory. We're pushing that line. I think you're feeling good about it. I love that. I'm with you, though. The early bye, I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Sometimes that's a blessing in disguise. Maybe you need that regrouping. The way it's playing out, you get those 2 early division games. I kind of like that. We heard Mike North talking about how the NFL is kind of focused on putting division games late. Last year, the Bears had their first division game in week 11. That felt really late. I thought that was too late, and obviously we saw the Bears season developed. By the time they played the first division game, they were out of it. And so I that was something that, looking at the schedule last year compared to this year, I like that you had a couple early division games. We'll see. This game I have circled is at Washington after the bye week, though. We're talking about that early bye, how that could be a negative. It could be a positive going into maybe the most anticipated Bears game of the season, outside of division games, outside the Ben Johnson return, right? The return to the Hail Mary scene with the Commanders, with Jaden Daniels, with Caleb Williams on Monday Night Football. I'm pumped for that game. That's going to be an awesome game, and I like that they're coming out of the bye with it. I'm just going to say right now, until they lose. If they lose, bad bye. Terrible bye week. I wish they had a later bye. If they win, good bye week.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy when you look at this schedule, and I had mentioned that they're number 2 in strength of schedule. And in addition to that, you draw a last place NFC West team in the 49ers. Like, the 49ers could be a 13-win team at the end of the year. So, look, it's not easy.
Even Vegas.
I know.
Even getting
right?
Vegas. Like, yeah. I don't anticipate them being as bad as they were last year either.
Yeah, so then Bears fans can sit there and watch Ashton Janty and Geno Smith, and Pete Carroll is the culture builder extraordinaire. I mean, Brock Bowers, goodness great. And Max Crosby, who I've covered, that guy is an animal. He's literally a pit bull. So I think it is going to be difficult. They will be tested, but hey, man, if you want to be the best, you might as well try to beat those. Now, my normal strategy, or my normal thing that I say around the schedule is, look, beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, go 500 against the good ones. Here's the problem. There are so many good ones on the schedule that 500 might not cut it. And look, so I do think that that's going to be difficult. My least favorite thing, and my boss, Justin Hathaway, knows it, but I did it, game-by-game predictions in May. Something that I'm not a huge fan of. And I put them at 10.
We all got to do them. Charge into the game. Charge into the game. We all got to feed the content machine.
100%.
Absolutely. Come on.
And I put them at 10-7. The reason why I did that is partially, I think that's somewhat realistic. It's also partially like strategic, because I don't want to go into that locker room and they're like, you had us at 4-13. I mean, we're not talking to you, dude. So there's some politics involved, but I think
10-7 is good though, Scott. I think 10-7 is a solid prediction. I mean, I know, Carmen, I think I have a feeling where you're going with this. We've talked about this before too. I think I know where you're going with that. 10-7 probably is on the optimistic train though, right? Yeah. I think that most fans would probably be a little bit more conservative there, but that's where I ended up with too, Scott. I hate to say it, because I was literally telling Lee, our producer, beforehand about this. I'm like, I'm going to do the W loss. I'm going to go through it. And I have a number in my head, but I'm probably going to end up higher than I thought. And I did. And I think that maybe that's a little bit of the bias. But I also was very, tempted to throw a tie in there. Do you guys know the last time the Bears had a tie? Just a random trivia question. Last time the Bears had a tie, I'll tell you, it hasn't been the last 20 years. It's been a lot longer than that.
I was going to say, was it in the 90s?
Not 90s. No, we're going back.
All right.
This is right after about the time they were winning championships. This is around the merger.
Wow. God, so 72.
72. There you go. Wow. So they had their last tie was 1972. Also, random tie fact. I went down the tie wormhole there. Bears had 6 ties in 1932. They were 7-1-6. Amazing record. I don't think anybody's predicting any ties this year, though, Carmen. What's your record? What number are you going with?
Do it.
Don't put it out in the universe that you want to tie. That just screws with so many things. God. So, to no one's surprise, and I just take a deep breath with me, guys, and everybody watching, everybody listening. Just Bears can improve without winning the division. Yeah. In the toughest division in football, playing the second toughest division in football, playing the third toughest division in football. My prediction, and I still think it's pretty optimistic, and I think it's pretty good, is 8-9. 8-9. And
I thought you were going to go lower, to be honest.
No, I'm not going to go lower, because I do think that it's attainable, but it would be eons better than last year. And again, it's more about, I'm more concerned with the vibes, for lack of a better term, of what it looks like around the building, how the Bears are playing in these games. Are they close? Are they competitive? Do you see fight? Do you see a plan? Do you see all of that? Does that manifest in wins and losses? Or how it manifests in wins and losses, I don't really know yet. And I keep going back to, it's a new regime. It's a new culture. Ben Johnson, when he took over in Detroit, his first 7 games didn't go incredibly well. They went 1-6, the Lions did, when Ben Johnson's first year as offensive coordinator. They were averaging, I believe, 24 points a game during that span, which is a far cry from what we saw Detroit do last year, which was ending the season with a league-leading average of, I think, 32 points per game. So it's not going to look like Detroit did last year for so many reasons. And so I do anticipate there being a learning curve. And the fact that there is going to be a learning curve still when you get Washington, and then you go back on the road 2 weeks later for Baltimore, and then Cincinnati right after that, and then you get the Giants at home. But then you got to go to Minnesota after that. And then you get the Steelers at home, but then you get Philadelphia. And then you get Green Bay. Like, there is a really hard chunk of games right in the middle of the season as this team is going to be trying to come together. So I think it's going to be pretty up and down. And I think that an 8-9 record, while it's not a winning record, is still better than last year. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more a symptom of the fact that the Bears are, like you said, Scott, second toughest strength of schedule. And that's just kind of the luck of the draw when you have to play the AFC North and the NFC East this year, on top of the fact you're playing a last place schedule that includes teams like the Niners and the Raiders, like we were talking about, who shouldn't and probably won't be the teams they were last year that landed them in last place. So it's going to be tough, but I don't know. I think
8-9 is a very reasonable take. 8-9 is very reasonable. I don't think that is unfair at all. Honestly,
I'm telling you, it's a little optimistic. I actually think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, Carmen.
Thank you, Norm.
You're not playing politics.
I'm with you. I don't think that's bad. There's no 8-9. Let's be honest, guys. They won 5 games last year. There's still improvement, and like you said, you're in a tough division. Speaking of that tough division, though, we know that was kind of one of the big downfalls for Matt Eberflus and one of his biggest weaknesses for his tenure with the Bears. They could not compete in the division. That was a very weak point for them, and we saw it play out, obviously, in the last year. Ben Johnson has familiarity with the division, obviously, as a coordinator, different than a head coach, but he knows the defenses he's playing up against, right? He has a little familiarity with some of that. Can he compete better? Can he get a couple more wins? How do you see those games playing out, Scott? Are you seeing 500? Can he be better than that?
Yeah, I'm always suspect about a rookie, or not a rookie, but a first-year NFL starter. It's going to have hiccups. There's no better time to play J.J. McCarthy than in week 1. Welcome to unscouted looks, JJ. It's going to be Dennis Allen's coming after you. So that gives me pause. And I don't know. I swear I'm not playing to the crowd here. I just don't think the Packers are as good as people think they are. I just don't. I'm not a Jordan.
You're not burdened with the last 30 years of having to watch these two teams play each other.
Yes. See, that's why I don't come into it with a giant rock over my head when I talk about the Packers. But yes, I do think that those division games are important. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how much of an impact coaching makes. In football, more than anything else, coaching matters. And I think that they have what should be a good coaching staff that can have positive impacts on the game. We still don't know that. I would also say that under a normal circumstance in mid-May, after the schedule gets released, we're probably going to talk to y'all about the schedule for 52 minutes. Not this week. And here's why. It was a news bonanza from Wednesday to Friday. I know that because I never left my office. Because on Wednesday night, schedule release comes out. Then on Thursday, we get news from ESPN coming from author and reporter, excellent reporter, Seth Wickersham, who has an upcoming book coming out here. And part of it, it's all about the American quarterback. The book is called American Kings, a biography of the quarterback. There's a section about Caleb Williams. Within it, and I'll try to cliff notes this as best I can so we can get to the juicy reactionary stuff. Basically, Carl Williams, Caleb Williams' father, did not want the Bears to draft his son. Went so far as to see if they could circumvent the NFL's CBA with their Players Association, possibly playing in the United Football League. He talked to Archie Manning, who, and I was in San Diego at the time, who said they were not going to play for the Chargers. They ended up drafted by the Chargers, going to the Giants in a swap of 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But basically, that's the nuts and bolts of it. Ultimately, Caleb Williams has a 30 visit, if I can talk correctly, with the Bears, ends up saying, yes, I'll do it. The main concerns they had is they didn't believe that Shane Waldron and by extension Matt Eberflus were the right coaches to maximize his potential. Carl Williams may have been right on that. Anyway, I think I summed it up well. Carmen, stage, floor, reaction. Obviously, Ben Johnson wasn't a part of that, right? This coaching staff wasn't a part of that. How did you kind of take it in the moment? It was obvious. I mean, it's talk radio fodder. You have a talk radio show on the weekends. What did you take from that?
I mean, honestly, I took away that I had a better opinion of Caleb Williams. Not that I had a bad one before, but like I had a better opinion of Caleb Williams at the end of this, because think about having to navigate all of these dynamics and all of this kind of these voices in your head and around you at 21, 22 years old when you're trying to decide like your entire future. I mean, him having the wherewithal to say, all right, we're going to explore every possible option, and then being left with like the literal nuclear option, which is like just badmouth the city, turn against them, make it an untenable situation, whatever. And as much as his father, it sounds like, wanted him to do that, he was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to nuke the city. I'm not, in his words, he's like, I'm not going to say anything bad about this city in the event that I do get drafted there. And then this is just a bad situation that made worse. And so I really had a lot of respect for the way that he kind of went through all of the dynamics and kind of tried to figure out what was best for him. I think the concerns that he had and that his dad had were completely validated.
Completely valid. Yep.
They were completely validated. When you fire the offensive coordinator and then fire a head coach for the first time in the middle of a season in franchise history. So this organization,
it didn't take
and again,
long at all.
This is like, the fact that they had this kind of foresight on it just kind of proves that this is and has been a very dysfunctional organization for a very long time, and they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt in a lot of ways. And so I'm totally with Carl Williams and Caleb Williams saying, yeah, like if that's my son, I'm going to have a lot of concerns about this. Are you going to be able to maximize his potential, or is he going to end up like his two? You wanted to look far in the past to see two other guys that did not work out with that were first-round quarterbacks. So I am optimistic now. All roads have now led to Ben Johnson. And it's because, though, the Bears have done things differently this offseason than we've ever seen them. And so I think that was a massive wake-up call. And obviously, the Bears knew this was all going on behind the scenes. They knew Caleb Williams' reluctance to come to Chicago. You heard that Ryan Poles was like, we're drafting you no matter what. And I have to think that served as a wake-up call for the Bears organization to be like, we need to change things drastically to make this a place where people want to come, because it's a wonderful city, filled with an amazing fan base. And it's for all other, weather, I guess, aside, this should be a place that you should clamor to be drafted to if you're an NFL player, because of the tradition that the Bears have instilled, defensively mostly, but this is a hard-nosed, football passionate city that really embraces its teams no matter what. So I think that at the end of the day, I came away with a higher opinion of Caleb Williams, because navigating all of that as a 21-year-old, no matter how much NIL has changed things, that's still a lot. And he navigated it with a lot of grace, going back and thinking about what he said at the time and at the combine and like throughout the season. And it just, sure, his body language showed it a little bit, but when something goes exactly how you thought it was going to go, and you tried to warn people that it was going to go like that, I'm shocked he wasn't more vocal about it.
I think that's a great point, Carmen. I think you're right. I think that he's just been under the microscope now for a long time. And obviously that comes along with being the number one pick. That comes along with being the high caliber player that he is. And nobody's going to complain. Nobody's going to feel bad for him. He's an NFL quarterback. This is what a lot of people would trade a lot of things for, right? So that's going to come with the territory. But I agree with you. I respect him for it. I think going back to the Esquire article that came out and just getting some of the behind the scenes background information about this guy and just learning a little bit more about Caleb Williams and his family. Scott, I know you have kids that play sports as well too. You know, like, why wouldn't you want the best for your kid in that situation? If there was anything you could do, whether it's in a travel, situation, a travel team early on in this kid's life, or whether it's going to the NFL, of course that parent is going to take it seriously and try to fight for their kid to be in the best possible situation. The NFL draft doesn't allow for that. That's just kind of the system. And you heard about some of the options that maybe they explored, going to other leagues, going back to USC. Of course, those are all options. But we saw how it played out. Caleb Williams is a Bear. And if you don't trust or if you don't believe that he wants to be a Bear, he got hit 70-something times back there, and he proved that he wants to be. Like, there should be no doubt amongst Bears fans that this guy is as much of a Bears quarterback as there's probably ever going to be. You should be excited about having this guy as your quarterback. And frankly, any questions that he has about him, I think are a little exaggerated in some of these aspects, right? A lot is made about nothing. And this is a quarterback, a young quarterback, like you're saying, Carmen, a young person that has navigated so much so early. It's impressive to me. I'm always very impressed with Caleb when he speaks with the media, the way he's able to show his personality. But he had to be going through the worst year of his life last year in terms of professionally, in terms of just playing football. Something he talked about, he lost joy. He lost the love of playing football in some ways, right? Like, they had to be so tough. So to be able to do that, to be able to respond, of course, this might have come out now because it is juicy and it is going to be something that, is going to be awesome to see in that book. It seems like a great book. I'm excited to check it out, but it's a little bit much about something that we probably already kind of knew, right? Like, that was already kind of out there, that we kind of, there was rumblings that maybe that was happening. So my biggest takeaway is that I'm excited that Caleb Williams is the Bears quarterback going forward, point blank.
Yeah, and they're right. Back to Carmen's point that all their concerns were completely valid. And do you think that Akili Smith and Tim Couch and David Carr, do you think those guys are not talented? They are talented, but they went to dysfunctional or fledgling organizations where their career never got off the ground because they didn't have the coaching, they didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the support there to be able to thrive. If they would have thrived in that particular situation, maybe not, right? But what I'm saying is, at that position, almost more than any other, organization that you go to matters. It just does. And look at the Bears' history. They don't even have a 4,000-yard passer. How is that humanly possible with this long? So I think that their concerns were valid. And I think that they navigated it well. And Carmen brought up some great points that Caleb found a way to navigate this minefield and come out with it. We can get to nobody was there to watch film with him part soon, but I wanted to bring up one other thing. The day that this excerpt comes out, Ben Johnson is on Fox Sports 1, and I don't know if it was scheduled before or after the news broke about Caleb Williams. I don't even think that it matters, because what I've said before is that in my 17 years covering the NFL, I've never seen a team react as poorly to adversity as the Matt Eberflus Bears. I haven't. They cowered in a corner after the Hail Mary, hid, and hoped the shadow would go away. Guess what? It doesn't. The reason why I bring that up is that whether it was planned or strategically scheduled or not, Ben Johnson goes on with Colin Cowherd, knowing full well he's going to get the question about Caleb Williams. And he could easily just say, I wasn't there. I don't know. But no, he answers a question about if there are doubts of Caleb Williams, if I can say his name, really wants to be a Bear. And he aggressively and defiantly said that I don't look at that as a concern. I look at this as an opportunity to get greatness out of an immensely talented player. I want him to be a 4,000-yard passer every year. I don't look at adversity as something to be feared or something to be concerned about. I look at it as an opportunity to get better. I mean, mic drop, right?
Let's go.
And he shut the story down right there. I have zero faith or confidence that Matt Eberflus would have done the same thing. There's no way. He dances around it. He skates the question. This one, now again, Ben Johnson had a degree of separation. He wasn't around for this version of the Bears, and clearly Caleb Williams is over the moon playing for him. But I thought there's so many angles to take here, but I thought that one was an important one and really kind of said something about Ben Johnson too.
Yeah, Ben Johnson gets it, the game,
yeah.
which is what you want to see, because he hasn't been a head coach before. And that's kind of, I mean, whoever is helping is media training Ben Johnson, like, bravo. Really well done. Just from his very first presser where he decides to bring up Matt LaFleur because he knows it's going to play to the Chicago crowd, or, attacking things head on and not shying away from the storylines that are inevitably going to be circulating about your team. Now, does this keep up when the Bears are on a skid or things aren't looking too well or they're on this learning curve and they're facing that adversity that Ben Johnson said that they're going to, because they are? That's an inevitability in the NFL. That's what I want to see. But so far, I mean, every test, quote unquote, that he's faced, he's passed outwardly, because I think Ben Johnson also knew that this was an opportunity to, again, you're speaking to, when you go on TV, when you go on these shows, you're not just speaking to the fan audience or whatever. Like, that is still you speaking to your players. That is still you representing the team. That is still you saying to your players, no, I'm going to have your back no matter what. It's not just going to be behind closed doors, or it's not going to be just in front of the cameras. I'm going to have your back no matter what. And that goes a really long way, because if you don't think these guys pay attention, I promise you they do. So that's really encouraging to me, is that Ben Johnson seemingly knows how to play the game already. And it was something that we know that the last regime didn't really know. And it just tells me that they are kind of following through on the things that they've said. And that's the biggest thing when you hear about Caleb Williams being left to his own devices at times to watch film. The biggest thing I want to say about that particular thing is, yes, these guys are professionals. Yes, they're NFL players. Yes, they need to be self-starters, self-motivators. They need to take things into their own hands all the time. However, it is completely unrealistic to expect a rookie in his first year to be left to his own devices. Usually coaches will be like, hey, turn on this game against this opponent, watch this. If they're not sitting there watching with them, they're giving these guys direction as to what they want them to hone in on, because that's what their game plan is built around. That's what they're seeing. That's how they're building out how to play these teams, these players, all of that kind of stuff. Even if it was only at times, to not get that direction, I can't imagine how lost Caleb Williams must have felt, because any player would, especially a quarterback. So I've seen a lot of mixed reviews, like, oh, he should have been, watching tape on his own, and that's not that. It is weird. It is weird. It's very, very. Yeah, I couldn't believe that people were like trying to say like, oh, it was fine. I'm like, that's not fine.
No, that's brutal. And that's like, what? Are you going to line up Caleb in front of a space launch and be like, hey, become a rocket scientist by watching it take off into outer space? No. You got to, you got to teach people things. And, of course, a rookie quarterback should not be left on his own. We know that obviously the structure with last year with the coaching staff, with also maybe the lack of experience in the QB room as well around him, maybe that played into it. But like you said, Carmen, Ben Johnson knows the game, right? He knows the game, but he also knows what the stakes are for this game that he's playing, right? He's going to be connected to Caleb Williams, and this is the biggest year of Caleb Williams' life. This is the biggest offseason of Caleb Williams' life. We know that year to one to year two jump could be the biggest that a quarterback takes. Not always, but sometimes that is how it plays out. And the way that a lot of people are talking about Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson, I think that obviously progress should be expected with that. I love that Ben Johnson is going to be out there challenging Caleb Williams, but you know that they're going to be married together. So I love that you have a coach that recognizes that. I don't think the urgency was placed on that last year with the previous regiment, right? Like, you have that, and it was just like, oh, yeah, we're going to make sure we're surrounding with good people. You obviously did. Like, the proof is in the pudding. We know that it didn't happen. And obviously when the details come out after the fact, it looks even worse than it did at the time.
Yeah, and I'm generally very complimentary of Ryan Poles, and I know it wasn't his hire, but he cannot escape criticism for a pivotal decision to retain Matt Eberflus and to put a rubber stamp on the Shane Waldron hire. It was Matt's hire, but still, yeah, I just,
there's one thing I want to point out here, actually, because like along these lines, because there was something that Seth Wickersham reported that Carl Williams was concerned about the Bears' stadium issues and that they're trying to rebuild a stadium. And I remember talking about it way back when there was a debate on whether to get rid of Justin Fields, whether to get rid of Matt Eberflus, all that kind of stuff. I said, you have to take the stadium build into account here, because that's money that is being allocated for the stadium that then makes you less likely to want to pay a quarterback. It makes you less likely to want to pay a coach that's not coaching for you. And that I truly believe that was part of the decision to retain Matt Eberflus, was his contract's not up. We have to pay him either way. We're trying to get a stadium built, and we can't afford to be spending extra money on another coach. So this all is so holistically involved in these decisions. And I think we need to remember that when we're talking through, and again, it makes Caleb Williams come off even more mature and emotionally mature, because he was trying to navigate all of this with all of these external factors. It's a lot. I just want to point out, like, things like that matter when it comes to these decisions.
And I think, in addition to Carmen being our show's voice of reason, she's also the queen of transitions, because that is a seamless one right into our next topic here, which is the fact that there is some stadium news and there is some momentum towards a build, and how all these things are being done at the same time. You're building up a team, you're building up the business infrastructure. You're also trying to get a stadium built. Now, quick summation of where we are. It involves us going back to March of 2024, when Kevin Warren talks at the NFL owners meetings and says, our focus is on the Chicago lakefront. And then you fast forward 12 months at the NFL owners meetings in 2025. And he and George McCaskey say, we're still looking at the lakefront, but man, Arlington Heights sure is beautiful, right? I dream of a stadium being there. And they compliment the Chicago suburb, where they also own a 326-acre parcel of land that is quote-unquote pad ready, which means you can start construction whenever you want, man. And that fast forwards to last week, Thursday, where the Bears put out a statement saying that they are focused on Arlington Heights. What's old is new again, or full circle, or whatever thing that you want to use. This wasn't surprising. It seemed like the owners' meetings were like softening the ground, that yes, every Chicago team plays in Chicago, and there's, it's beautiful at Soldier Field and all these other types of things we talk about with the Chicago lakefront as an ideal location, focused on Arlington Heights now. And they, I guess, have cited, quote unquote, from the statement, significant progress towards Arlington Heights. Even if we are not surprised, what is the reaction coming out of that? Might go for it.
Yeah, I think that it's part of the process, right? I think that when you talk about stadiums getting built, a lot of things are at play. And it seems that once Kevin Warren came in, after they already bought the land, it might have changed the perspective. They wanted to go through the process a little bit differently than maybe they initially planned when they first bought the land. Kevin Warren's the one that's making the decision. Kevin Warren is the one obviously leading the charge with this and has the experience doing this with his previous job with the Vikings. So I think that, this is a long process. Stadiums don't just happen. And we know, especially within Chicago and Chicago politics and Illinois politics, sometimes there's a lot of back and forth. And I think that this has really just been a slow-moving train that hopefully we're getting to the destination of Arlington Heights. It seems like that's where it's going to be. And it seems that maybe we're going to see some movement and we'll see the actual visible progress coming here soon. But personally, I like you said, I wasn't surprised by this at all. I think it was a little bit of the politicking, a little bit of the game of back and forth that naturally comes with this. And I think they're always going to end up there. And frankly, I think it's the best place for them to end up in the long run. I think that they're going to be able to make more money off of this in the long run as a business. That's what you want. So that's good for them. And I think for the Bears fans, you're going to get a product that's going to be top notch. I think you're going to get a stadium eventually. And as Tom Waddle calls it, paradise around it. You get the hotels, you get the bars, you get the restaurants. What more could you ask for as a Bears fan? So, yeah, I don't know if necessarily surprised that it's back to Arlington Heights, but I'm all for it. I think let's just get it moving. I just want to see what's going to happen now. Let's get some shovels in the ground.
Yeah, all you got to do is follow the money. And the money is that they own the land in Arlington Heights. You build a stadium on that land, you own the stadium. You build around that stadium and you're revenue sharing with probably other businesses, but you're the landlord on all of that extra stuff. And for the Bears, which, they're the founding franchise, the McCaskey family, this is their livelihood. The Bears are their livelihood. And that's not the case for a lot of NFL owners. So they can afford to maybe not make a whole lot of money off of the stadium or this or that, the other, because they own other billion-dollar corporations and their teams are just kind of their glorified hobby. That's not the case with the Chicago Bears. So I really think that Arlington Heights has been probably the ideal location, and whether it was politicking or what have you, saying, the focus is the lakefront, this, that, the other, the reality of the matter is, like, they don't own the land on the lake. That belongs to the Chicago Park District, and that limits the revenue sharing the revenue that they can make off of this team. So I have always kind of thought, yeah, Arlington Heights is probably going to be where this all ends up, one way or the other, because that's what's going to make the team the most money. So it's as simple as that.
Bears are going to start making that Beyonce money soon. They're going to be bringing in that Beyonce money, like we just saw.
And then you think we can do concerts, and like in the wintertime, you can host a Super Bowl, like all of these things by putting a domed stadium in Arlington Heights. But I mean, it's like, I like the fact that they're along the lake. I love the location of Soldier Field from a historic perspective and all of that kind of stuff. But I think, again, the reality is just follow the money.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what you do. And you see these entertainment districts that are becoming the norm. Now, ideally, you want to stay in the city center. I do think that tradition for Chicago sports is important, as we have seen, especially with the baseball products here. But Arlington Heights is not that far away. I was in the Bay Area when they moved, when the 49ers moved from South San Francisco, which is just outside of the city, down to Santa Clara, which is 50 miles south. Might as well be another country. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing about that particular move and them not being a part of San Francisco anymore. I don't think that that's necessarily how you have to look at it. I think the amenities of a new stadium and the revenue of bringing in, concerts and Final Fours and all these things that right now Chicago is not part of the rotation, but surely would like to be. I think all those things matter. And at some point, I've covered a couple failed stadium pursuits in San Diego and Oakland that saw their teams move. Obviously, the Bears are going literally nowhere, but these things don't always end well with the fans happy. And I think that this is an opportunity to get things moving and to get into a new venue. So I think all those things are important. And really, to borrow a phrase from our guy, Dave Wanstead from 2 weeks ago, I think I'm all talked out, y'all. I mean, think about everything that we've done. Mike North joining us off the top of the show, schedule, Caleb and Carl Williams, and now on to the stadium. Action-packed third episode of the Chicago Football Show. I'm seeing the credits go. It's from Mike. For Carmen, I'm Scott. Thank you so much. Talk to you again next week. See ya.